It's important for us as dads to understand how impactful pornography can be on a child's brain. If you ask any adult guy about the first time that he saw pornography, if he saw pornography as a child, he can likely tell you a complete story, even though they can't remember anything else about that day.
The purpose of this show is to help men to think biblically about the different spheres of life, right? We understand there are spheres of government. There are also spheres of our existence. And one of those that is most important for us as dads is that sphere of family. We're to steward our families well. And I know I'm a dad of two daughters who has been praying for their future spouses since before they were born. I care deeply that my children experience a life of joy and service to the Lord. And so I want to ask you, Sam, as dads, how can we be preparing our children to have victory in this area?
Right. Thank you. Thank you for that. That is so awesome, because if we're not doing our part, then we're just creating another generation who's struggling in silence. And we don't want that, right? And it's important for us as dads to understand how impactful pornography can be on a child's brain. If you ask any adult guy about the first time that he saw pornography, if he saw pornography as a child, he can likely tell you a complete story, even though they can't remember anything else about that day.
Wow.
Right? That's how impactful it is on that young brain. I remember being 10 years old. I was walking out of my home in Florida. My brother, who is 9 years older than me, or 10 years older than me, and his friend were leaning up against his car. And they were looking at a magazine sideways. And I said, "Hey, what are you guys looking at? Because how can you read sideways?" And they flipped it around. And I didn't step further away. I stepped closer, even though I grew up in a Christian home. I didn't even understand the basic mechanics of sex, but I was naturally curious about what the opposite sex looked like without clothes. Now, I can't tell you anything else about that day, but dopamine fires off, and it helps create, it ignites these feelings that feel good, especially when sexual cues are picked up, even though I didn't understand what I was feeling. It can also focus the attention of a child to the point of tunnel vision, as well as adults, right? So in God's design, this is beautiful, because dopamine fires off and now you're focused on your spouse. The rest of the world disappears, right? But pornography is not sex. It's a hijacking of what God created. So then the teenage years come along, and there's this ongoing repetition because we're not talking about pornography. We're not equipping, we're not protecting enough in our homes. And so this ongoing repetition of use of pornography happens, and it begins building those neural pathways that crave it more and more and more. And if there's been some struggles, some pains, whatever else is going on, it's very easy to begin using pornography as an escape, a way to regulate your moods, anesthetize your emotions, etc. And those triggers expand to things like boredom. I didn't do well at school. Whatever it is, pornography becomes a secret escape. So, how do we combat this? We start by having conversations at a young age. And you're like, okay, how young do we start? Well, as soon as your child can use words, they need to know the correct names of their body parts. I serve on a trafficking task force and others in the past, and what police would tell me is often we couldn't prosecute because there were nicknames and other things used for body parts, or they didn't understand where their private areas were, etc. And because of that, we couldn't press forward with the prosecution.
Right.
All right. So we need to begin letting them know the correct names of their body parts. And there's also this great book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, Junior. And Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, Junior walks kids through what good pictures are and what bad pictures are. It makes sense, right? And when there are good pictures of our pets and our family, and they hang them on the walls. And sometimes we go on vacation and we go to the beach. And when we go to the beach, we wear our bathing suits. Now a child knows where their bathing suit area, and that's a private area. Those are private areas.
Right.
And so now they're more, and someone, we need to equip our kids to know that they can say no to an adult, that their bathing suit area is private to them, and they can say no to anyone, right? And they need to understand why that is too. Okay, so that book helps you do that. And then it says, well, when you see pictures that where the bathing suit area isn't covered, well, that's pornography. And we can turn, run, and tell. So it equips them to turn, run, and tell, turn, run, and tell. And that repetition helps prepare them for the day they see pornography. Mm-hmm. Now you go, all right, Sam, you want me to actually introduce the word pornography to my kids. You've got to be crazy.
Right.
All right. So 7-year-old boy is at his neighbor's house. And well, let me back up. This mom had followed this plan of action, began having software on all the devices in the home to both block and monitor what's being done, but also having ongoing conversations to teach, train, and disciple her kids. And she read the Good Pictures, Bad Pictures book to her 7-year-old. Mm-hmm. They've read it again and again. And this 7-year-old boy goes to his neighbor's house, and that 7-year-old boy at the neighbor's house has gotten an iPad for his birthday.
Right.
And very quickly he has learned he has come across pornography by accident, and he takes this device and he sticks it in the face of the other 7-year-old boy who's been trained. Mm-hmm. But the 7-year-old boy who's been trained goes, no, that's pornography. And he turns, he runs, and he tells mm-hmm. mom and dad what happened, right? He leaves, goes back home next door, tells them what happens. Well, they congratulate him. I'm sure he got an extra scoop of ice cream or whatever it was. They're really proud.
Right.
But they want to let the other parents know what happened. Well, they're flabbergasted that their 7-year-old would be remotely curious about this, even though I was curious at that age too, right?
Right.
With a little more investigation, they find that their 7-year-old son has shown pornography to kids throughout the neighborhood, 7, 8, 9, and 11-year-olds. The only child who said anything was the child who'd been trained.
Wow.
All the other kids kept it their secret. Why? Well, they may have had some fear that they might get in trouble. Maybe they had some shame about it. Maybe it was their secret. Maybe it was, or whatever it was. All of the other kids kept silent. None of their parents were informed. And so we hear again and again through professionals in this field that when we equip our kids and train them about these things, they don't become more curious. They become less curious and lean on you, and they become an ally with you to help protect them.
This episode of Rapid Response was brought to you by CTC Math. Visit them at ctcmath.com today.